And now to North Carolina. This is the newest battleground for the congressional redistricting fight. The state has adopted a new Trump-backed map that's designed to give Republicans an additional House seat. Now, North Carolina's Republican-led state legislature approved the new map on Wednesday, and Republicans already hold 10 out of the state's 14 congressional districts. This new map would give them another seat, making 11, and representing more than 75% of North Carolina's House delegation. The new map primarily affects Democratic Congressman Don Davis, who represents a majority black district in what is known as the Black Belt. This map is already facing legal challenges similar to many of the other gerrymandering efforts happening in red states across the country. A group of voters is challenging the map, saying it specifically targets black districts and further weakens black voting power. In their complaint, they write, quote, North Carolina gained a congressional district after the 2020 census, almost entirely due to an increase in the state's minority population. But the General Assembly has gone to great lengths to ensure that the increase in minority population does not translate into an increase in minority electoral opportunity. The 2025 plan continues North Carolina's long tradition of enacting redistricting plans that pack and crack minority voters into districts designed to minimize their voting strength. Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Don Davis of North Carolina, whose seat and district are in jeopardy with the state's new congressional map. Good morning, Congressman. What's your plan on how you intend to fight back? Are you going to run again in your district? What does that look like? How are you feeling about your ability to retain your place in Congress?
When we look at what's taking place in North Carolina, I've been down this road before. I win, they redraw the district. I win again, they redraw the district. This is not my first round of this. And as I think about 2026, I'm running. This will be my third term and third time running, and it will be my third different map here in North Carolina. But here's the deal. The people here in Eastern North Carolina, which, by the way, where I was raised, I was born, and I'm a product of. We're going to continue to talk about the issues that matter most to the people. Right now, people are telling me, I'm concerned about costs. I'm concerned about paying the bills, getting through the end of the month, raising children. I spoke to a lot of farmers over the last few weeks, and farmers are concerned about trade issues. These are the things that are on the people's mind. We're trying to figure out, why are we sending $20 billion to Argentina when farmers right here in Eastern North Carolina in America are hurting? These are the things that we're talking about. And all this other stuff, redistricting, they're not asking for maps, but all these become distractions, no more than a distraction. And people believe, by the way, in the last election, President Trump won North Carolina's first district, and I won North Carolina first district. So I understand a lot of the issues, even in some of the most challenging parts of our state, but people are not saying they want a new map.
Congressman, what do you make of the claims by Republican legislators from your state that this is all about trying to give Republicans another seat, because that's legal? And this has nothing to do with the notion of race or disenfranchising the state's black electorate, because as of right now, that is generally illegal.
Well, let's be clear at what's happening. You're going into one part of the state, Eastern North Carolina. There are no other parts of the state that are impacted on this new map. And you're shuffling the deck. You're pulling about 60,000 African Americans from the first district into the third district. And when you do that, this is according to what they're saying, by the way. They met on take up a new map to attempt to predetermine, and this is the government, by the way, to predetermine the outcome of an election 377 days away. So we are sitting here in North Carolina without a budget. A lot of the schools are trying to figure out the future, what pathway they're going to head on, decisions that need to be made. We're dealing with healthcare issues, but we're redrawing maps. Everybody's left scratching their head, and this is not just a concern amongst Democrats. I've heard so many concerns raised by Republicans, unaffiliated. So many are trying to figure out what in the world's going on right now.
Congressman, in the last hour, I spoke with two of your colleagues, both Congressman Clyburn and Congressman Beanie Thompson. And with each of them, we talked about this in the notion of fighting fire with fire. What do you make as someone who could be affected in your own state when you hear things about what's going on, for example, in Illinois, where there's a need for balancing the interest of Democrats there who are looking to redraw maps in favor of the party, but at the same time, that redistricting could disenfranchise or dilute the strength of black voters in that space. What do you make of that calibration?
I believe it's dangerous to place short-term power gains, a struggle over short-term power gain over the potential long-term effects. And that's why I believe the most important thing that we could ever do right now is to implement a national ban on mid-decade redistricting. That's not court mandated. I mean, this is ridiculous. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which state is doing it. This is about the people and allowing the voices of the people to be heard and empowering people, not short-term power plays.